The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Moody's Revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's live stream. It is Tuesday, April 14th. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Today in the news, top stories today. China challenges the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz and other Iranian ports. Representative Eric Swalwell is gone, has resigned. And California Senator Adam Schiff is in some real trouble. We're going to get into these stories and more coming up right now. We have about 32 stories to get through today, so let's read the news. All right, we're going to start with just the news. Trump administration in discussions about another round of negotiations with Iran. As I said previously, apparently Iran was willing to negotiate in Pakistan, but they couldn't call back to the rest of the regime in Iran for security purposes. So they had to actually go back to Iran and confer with the other leaders in Iran. And it seems like they're still willing to negotiate. What that exactly means is hard to say, but there are more things developing now. Citing two unnamed U.S. officials, the Associated Press reported that discussions are being had about a possible second round of talks. The details, including the location and who would serve in the delegations, are still being decided, but the talks could start as soon as Thursday. Good news. Story number 2 from the New York Post. Iran doesn't have military means to keep up fight against U.S. and Israel, ex-Pakistani official says. President Trump's naval blockade on Iranian ports is targeting one of the Islamic Republic's most sensitive points, and it may be enough to inspire Iran to respond to the U.S. peace overtures, a former senior Pakistani official told the Post on Monday as weekend talks here ended without a deal. We all know that. This may prove totally wrong, but it's my assumption that whatever option has been given to them as take it or leave it, they will come back on it, either saying we accept it or they will say we totally reject it, explained retired Lieutenant General Mohammed Saeed, or they will say there are adjustments to seek in our option. Saeed added that Iran will be eager to resume negotiations with Washington because they know what economic hardships their people are facing. He also went on to say, irrespective of their perception of victory, they know what economic hardships their people are facing. They know the level of inflation. They know how terrible their currency is. Indeed. Also, he goes on to say, while they would keep firing drones and missiles for a few more days, they don't have the capable military means to counter the U.S. and Israel, and they don't have a cost-effective military options to fall back on. Even their drones cost, $3,000 a piece. That's money. And so if your economy's in the shitter, you don't have $3,000, you don't have $300,000, and you don't have millions, especially if your oil is going to be blockaded. But let me add a wrinkle here. I voiced this article yesterday. This is story number 3 from Fox News. Iran secures UN role with backing from UK, France, Canada, Australia, as U.S. stands alone. UN Watch warns dictatorships will now hold a majority on the committee that controls NGO accreditation, which is the non-governmental organizations that are used by spy groups and stuff to try to infiltrate. The story goes on to say the ECO-SOC nominated the Islamic Republic of Iran to the UN's Committee for Program and Coordination Wednesday. The body that helps shape policy on human rights, women's rights, and disarmament and counterterrorism. Nomination is widely expected to be finalized as a United Nations General Assembly typically approves such recommendations without a vote. At the same session, the ECOSOC elected China, Cuba, Nicaragua, Saudi Arabia, and Sudan to the Committee on Non-Governmental Organizations, which oversees the accreditation and the access for thousands of NGOs operating within the UN system. And as we found out recently with the war on Gaza, that a lot of these NGOs have political allegiances to one group or another. Thanks again for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment. Appreciate you. Moving on with the news. Story number 4. Now, this is very important because this is the key to understanding the Iran conflict. Because after Maduro was ousted and we ejected China, and that we secured a deal with the Venezuelan government to not participate with the dark fleet tankers of sanctioned oil, and we came to an agreement with the U.S. and Venezuela to supply us with more oil and kick out the Chinese, that the Chinese immediately pivoted to Iran. And this is what they were doing, arming Iran and providing Iran or making Iran uncontestable in the sense of always being able to secure oil to the Chinese. Okay, Zero Hedge, U.S. sanctioned tanker signaling Chinese ownerships test Trump blockade with Hormuz crossing following the news that 2 tankers, one of which indicated China as its destination, had turned around earlier in the day after the Trump blockade of the Straits of Hormuz had kicked in. One of them, a tanker linked to China, is making its way through the Strait of Hormuz, testing President Trump's naval blockade, Bloomberg reported. Well, do you trust Bloomberg? This is serious because that's the whole point of the blockade, is to keep China from shipping in advanced missile systems to Iran, which is exactly what they were doing, what they were planning on doing, and now it seems like they're most likely to do. The Rich Starry 188-meter medium-range tanker, earlier known as Full Star, was blacklisted by Washington in 2023 for helping Iran evade energy sanctions. It was not clear on this occasion whether it visited Iranian ports before its transit or is carrying cargo. This is important. This exit from the Persian Gulf is a second attempt for the carrier in less than 24 hours. Just as the blockade came into effect, the Rich Starry was making its way into the narrow waterway near Iran's Qeshm Island and turned back, as reported earlier, only to restart its exit just hours later, broadcasting that it has a Chinese owner and crew. While this is a safety mechanism frequently used by vessels not to attract Iran's attention, it will now test the U.S. resolve to challenge vessels tied to the world's largest oil importer, China. The issue is not oil going to China. The issue is Chinese advanced weapons going to Iran. The Rich Starry is owned by Full Star Shipping Ltd., which shares the same contact details as the Shanghai Zunrun Shipping Company Ltd. A maritime database Equisys shows a call made to Shanghai Zunrun did not get through. While the company didn't immediately respond as an email request for comment, the Shanghai-based entity is also sanctioned by the State Department. Why would that be? Another tanker, the Elpsis, headed into the Gulf of Oman via the strait just as the blockade began. Ship tracking platforms Kepler and Vortexa indicate that Elpis, had docked at an Iranian port in the Gulf just before attempting to pass through Hormuz. Elpis owner is Cart Chemical SA that uses its manager IMS Ltd's contact details. A call made to the Malaysian-based IMS failed to connect. IMS did not immediately respond to email for a request. It has links to China. No vessels where they're check this out. No vessels with their transponders on have been sailing into the Persian Gulf since the blockade came into effect. No vessels with their transponders on. So their transponders are off to try to avoid detection and also to make it clear that they're not broadcasting their affiliation. Story number 5, Fox News. New York Times columnist torn about rooting for Iran regime's downfall since it would give a win to Trump and Netanyahu. Now, this is, was it David Brooks? No, Thomas Friedman. Oh, so Thomas Friedman with the New York Times, columnist with the New York Times, who's an American, is debating his allegiance specifically because even though he's an American, he doesn't want America to win against a terrorist regime, relatively terrorist Islamic regime. He would rather have Iran win, or he doesn't want the U.S. to win because it's under Trump. This is one of the most backward things that I ever heard. Now, you could not chime in. If you don't want to give Trump a win, you could just not chime in. But he's forced to speak about, give his opinion on this. And the point is, whether you think it's a good or a bad decision, now that it's on, who you're going to vote for. Zero Hedge, story number 6, fearing Iranian escalation in the Red Sea, Saudis push Trump to call off Hormuz blockade. Wary of Iranian escalation that shuts down Red Sea traffic, and now the Red Sea is on the other side of the Arabian Peninsula. So Iran would have to use long-range missiles used to target Israel to try to attack Saudi Arabia's Red Sea port. So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is asking Trump administration to back off its newly implemented blockade of Iranian-linked shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. It wasn't Iranian-linked shipping. It was all shipping. The Wall Street Journal reported on Monday evening. But on Sunday, senior advisor to Iranian Supreme Leader Mohammad Khamenei warned that Iran has large, untouched levers to respond to such blockade. Bring it. I don't believe we're still in the middle of a ceasefire, so hopefully in the meantime we're trying to locate the mines that are in the Persian Gulf or in the Strait of Hormuz. As I said from the beginning of this conflict, and I'm going to continue to say, this is all about China. It's not really about Iran. I mean, of course it is about Iran, but it's really about China and the fact that China was on the verge of supplying new advanced anti-ship missiles to Iran, and that threat still persists. Not only that, but the press seems to be talking about anti-aircraft missiles from China, and they're very sheepish about talking about the anti-ship missiles. Why is that? Well, if the Chinese are going to force their way with advanced weapons through the blockade, there's the issue. We're trying not to go to World War III here, and I think China is calling our bluff. The point is you can't get advanced missiles into a war zone. That shouldn't be allowed, and I don't really know how to do it, but they better get on the phone with, get onto the phone with Beijing and say, knock it off. Because we virtually have won the war, and this puts China in a very tight spot. Are they willing to go? I don't think so. I think they're a paper tiger, and I think if you call their bluff, they don't have the resources to sail their navy to the Persian Gulf, or they would have done so already. And I'm not a warmonger. I don't like war, but this was what it was all about, is restructuring the global order from the globalist intent to hand everything to the communist Chinese, undermining the U.S. supremacy. And let's not forget that the U.S. supremacy is, matter of fact, about individual freedoms and liberties and democracy. Story number 7, Zero Hedge again, how Iran's Mosaic doctrine is fracturing. If you didn't know what that was, U.S. Central Command Admiral Brad Cooper said Iran has suffered a generational military defeat. And basically it was about their strategy. And here it is pointed out. Iran developed its Mosaic military doctrine by drawing direct lessons from Saddam Hussein's collapse in just 26 days. After the 2003 invasion of Iraq, Iranian Brigadier General Muhammad Ali Jafari reorganized the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in 2008 into 31 provincial commands, each with its own weapon stockpiles, logistics chains, and pre-delegated authority. And that's what you're seeing play out now. Asymmetric warfare is the recourse of the states that cannot prevail conventionally. Dispersion and concealment are the tools of a military that has already conceded the conventional battlefield. Israel, operating alongside the United States in Operation Epic Fury, mastered asymmetric tactics and turned Iran's own doctrine against it, employing intelligence penetration, targeted elimination, and network disruptions with superior precision. The doctrine solved the problem that Saddam Hussein could not, preventing decapitation from producing immediate collapse. It never solved attrition. The Mosaic delays the timeline of dissolution, but leaves dissolution itself intact. The ceasefire arrived at a moment of Iranian weakness, and the pressure that produced that weakness remains available to Washington. Islamic Republic knows that each day the ceasefire holds, it does so on the terms that Washington can revise. The second vulnerability is structural. Hold 1 second. Sorry about that. The Mosaic Doctrine distributed resilience horizontally across provincial land commands, but the IRGC functional branches, its Navy, Air Force, Missile Corps, and Cyber and Intelligence Directorates, each represent a distinct accumulation of tiles within a separate supply chains and command structures. Sorry about that. Technical difficulty there. Just hang on there. The United States has dismantled these branches sequentially rather than simultaneously, degrading each functional pillar while removing leadership at the center. Very, very influential there. I got a little discombobulated there. I'm sorry. It seems like when I'm in the middle of the most important stories, I start having tech failures. All right, let's move on. Story number 8. Gabbard claims coordinated effort by intelligence community to advance narrative to impeach Trump. Whistleblower admitted on initial form they did not have direct knowledge of Trump's private communications. Getting a lot of warm. The issue with this now, so this is the breaking news story. I'm going to get into the story right here with Fox, but just synopsis. So you remember Trump's second impeachment, right? That was based on whistleblower testimony. And the issue is the law says to advance this sort of investigation and impeachment, whistleblower needs to have firsthand accounts, not hearsay. And that's what we were arguing about several years, was it 6 years ago? That the whistleblower, A, was anonymous, and B, didn't have firsthand account of what Trump supposedly did. It was secondhand, a hearsay. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard released newly declassified testimony that she alleges showed coordinated effort by the intelligence community to manufacture conspiracy, of course, used as a basis of President Donald Trump's first impeachment. It was his first impeachment. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence on Monday released 2 declassified transcripts from closed-door House Intelligence Committee hearings that Gabbard's office says show former Intelligence Community Inspector General Michael Atkinson advanced as credible a whistleblower complaint based on secondhand information from an individual who had previously worked with then Vice President Joe Biden on Ukraine. Gabbard's office argued that based on this and other testimony, Atkinson's actions were weaponized the whistleblower process and exceeded his statutory jurisdiction. He changed the fucking law to accommodate this whistleblower, which is, it was all a conspiracy. I mean, it's all being revealed now, and just as we said it was, is that it was all a hatched plan by the Democrats, the DNC, which was just mostly weaponized more whistleblowers or more accusers against one of their own, Eric Swalwell. All right, let's go on. Just the News, article number 9, FBI reveals it is reviewing closely new allegations of Ukraine impeachment accuser. FBI said on Monday night that it is closely reviewing newly declassified memos showing the intelligence community kept secrets for years, evidence raising questions about the credibility and bias of the main accuser in President Donald Trump's 2019 impeachment case. The declassified impeachment memos show that the so-called whistleblower behind the 2019 impeachment singled out Director Patel by name, relied on hearsay, submitted false claims, and had documented political bias, all of which was hidden from the American people. This is the same playbook used during the Russia collusion hoax. Same scheme, same thing. They're doing it again and again and again. And it doesn't matter. Political win is more important than honesty, obviously. The Federalist chimes in. Story number 10, newly declassified docs reveal Trump impeachment whistleblower was a Democrat crony. The anonymous whistleblower secretly met with the Democratic staff of Adam Schiff prior to submitting his complaint in August 2009. Now, Adam Schiff has said that he didn't know anything about it. Why would an anonymous whistleblower meet with the staff of, at that time, Representative Congressman Adam Schiff, if Adam Schiff didn't know anything about it? Former Inspector General fast-tracked a whistleblower complaint that led to the first impeachment of Donald Trump in 2019, knew the whistleblower was a registered Democrat and a Joe Biden loyalist, yet still determined his complaint was a matter of urgent concern that appeared credible. The documents also reveal the anonymous whistleblower secretly met with the Democratic staff of former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff prior to submitting his complaint in August 2009. Yet under direct questioning, the whistleblower, later identified by Real Clear Investigations as the intelligence analyst Eric Swalwell, failed to disclose those contacts and interviews with the IG investigators or on whistleblower forms, according to more than 350 pages of intel briefings Schiff classified as secret and locked up in a Capitol vault. It was a conspiracy launched by Adam Schiff, who was part of the intelligence chair. And remember, at the time, he kept saying, oh, I have evidence that Trump is colluding with Russia or has colluded with Russia. There was no evidence. Was that his evidence? A friend of his, a Democrat who was willing to testify that he heard someone that heard something about something that cannot at this point prove out to be true. And first and second of all, the fact is that, and we're going to point that out in just a second, that the law was changed, that you're not supposed to allow hearsay on such documents. DJ Media, someone's a felon, bombshell docs seem to show that Adam Shifty Schiff was key in Trump coup. No shit. As I just said. The good news is, from Just the News, article number 12, Alan Dershowitz, Trump could move to expunge 2019 impeachment after release of bombshell evidence. Dershowitz, a Democrat at the time who worked to defend Trump at the impeachment trial that ended in the president's acquittal, said it would be an interesting novel approach for Trump to go to Chief Justice John Roberts, who presided over the case, or Congress and ask for the impeachment to be reversed because the defense team was denied the right to confront his accusers with exculpatory evidence, which means it could have got him off. Here's the case in point. The Federalist, the timing is suspicious. Intel IG admitted under oath he changed whistleblower rules for anti-Trump Ukraine op in 2019. Atkinson, who was the IG, his own 2019 testimony, now public, confirms the ICIG did change the rules and that Davis and the Federalist weren't conspiracy theorists, but rather the only real journalists around. And what that means is newly unveiled testimony from October in 2019 shows that Atkinson conceded the change he ordered to the whistleblower complaint form, and it looked suspicious, but said the timing was merely unfortunate, that it didn't mean it was part of an overall conspiracy. The timing was unfortunate. It looked suspicious. I get that, Atkinson testified. Atkinson said that after several media inquiries highlighted that the then current form required firsthand knowledge of wrongdoing in order for a complaint to meet the urgency threshold to be sent to Congress, he ordered his staff to secretly change the rules so the secondhand hearsay complaints could be a legitimate basis for expedited processing or proceeding. It's a fucking conspiracy. Whether it's lower court judges or it's the the Investigator General's office, didn't matter if it was Rosenstein or Rosenthal, whatever that guy's name was, the second in charge of the AG. It was a conspiracy. Adam Schiff, Eric Swalwell, Nancy Pelosi. It goes on, and the conspiracy is just unveiling itself continually. It's manifesting itself every friggin' day, and it's the source is the Democratic National Committee. By Sunday evening, the Golden State Democrat announced he was excuse me. Funny. We were moving on to the next story. Story number 14, PJ Media confirmed Democrats knew Swalwell was a creepy predator. I thought I had text from this too. Bear with me a second. So everybody knew. We had journalists that knew. We had journalists come out yesterday. I reported on this previously. We had journalists that knew. We had staff members that knew that Swalwell was. I swear to God, I thought I had this text. In any case, the text said, or maybe it was text from another story. No, it was from this PJ article, the PJ Media article that said everybody knew to keep their young female staffers away from Eric Swalwell and Matt Gaetz. But I reported yesterday that a reporter came out and go, everybody in Washington knew that Eric Swalwell was a sexual predator. How you want to classify that, it's really up to you. Associated Press Representative Eric Swalwell of California says he will resign after sexual misconduct allegations. Doesn't matter whether he lost the faith of the Democratic Party. If you go against the DNC and you're a Democrat, not only will they not support you, they will actively try to destroy you if you go against what they said. So if you didn't tune into yesterday's live stream, the Democratic National Committee said, Swalwell, you have to drop out because with ranked voting in California, it could very well end up that two Republicans are running against each other for governor. So you have to drop out. And he said, I'm winning, basically winning the Democratic primary. I'm not dropping out. He was ahead of both Porter and that other jerk, a Democratic jerk. And so he said, I'm not dropping out. And you see what happens when someone, even if you're a sitting president, if you go against the Democratic Party, if you think that the president of the United States is more powerful than the Democratic Party, you're wrong. In this case with Trump, it is because you're an opposite party. But when Joe Biden was president, he did the same thing. He said, I'm running again. And you saw what happened to him. The Federalist chimes in, a Democrat smear machine spares no one in its quest for power. Representative Eric Swalwell just found out the hard way that his party will stop at nothing in its bid to acquire and maintain power, even if it means taking out one of their own. For those catching up on this weekend's news, Fang Fang's former fella was hit with the allegations of sexual misconduct from several women. As Federalist Matt Kittle reported, the San Francisco Chronicle on Friday dropped the bombshell in which a former staffer accused the congressman of sexual assault. CNN followed with more details and more women stepping forward. Swalwell is accused of sending some women unsolicited, explicit, or nude photos, whatever. Swalwell's prospect for remaining in California's Democratic gubernatorial primary seemed slim by the time Sunday rolled around. The congressman lost all of his 21 of his endorsements and from fellow members of Congress, et cetera, et cetera. As I said yesterday, they let you continue with your malfeasance until they use that to destroy you. So if you think, hey, all the Democrats are stealing, so I'm going to steal, they could use that against you, of course, and they will. Like I said previously, and the Federalist points out, Eric Swalwell slept with a Chinese communist spy. And for that, he was kicked off the Intelligence Committee, rightfully so. But did they call for his ouster then? He's been compromised by the Chinese. Oh, no. He was just unwitting. Okay, just like Dianne Feinstein had, Senator Dianne Feinstein of California had a Chinese spy as a driver for 20 years. But you're not removed for that. You're removed for pinching some girl's ass or raping. I'm not equating the two, but this was obviously honeypot operations done by the Democratic Party, probably or more than likely consensual, but then put away into the background and then to pop out whenever you need to put pressure on Eric Swalwell. When Sunday evening came, the Golden State Democrat announced he was calling it quits. I am suspending my campaign for governor. To my family, staff, friends, and supporters, I'm deeply sorry for mistakes in judgment I have made in the past. I will fight the serious false allegations that have been made, but that's my fight, not a campaign's. The Democratic congressman spent years peddling the Russia collusion hoax that basically accused Donald Trump of conspiring with Moscow to steal the 2016 election. And that's what we got to previously with Adam Schiff, and he's next. I don't think the Democrats are going to turn on Adam Schiff because he wasn't running for governor. But the point is, if you say no to the DNC, you're done. If they don't kill you, right, they'll destroy you. And they do it to Republicans all the time. Next up, New York Post, article number 17, Biden DOJ weaponized federal law to prosecute pro-lifers and give them longer prison sentences. The Department of Justice under former President Joe Biden withheld evidence and approved aggressive arrest tactics when targeting pro-life defendants and then slapped them with longer prison sentences than pro-abortion ones, according to an explosive internal review released Tuesday. Good job, Gabbard. The DOJ revealed the stunning abuses in a nearly 900-page report after examining more than 700,000 records related to the Biden administration's prosecutors under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, that's the FACE Act. The 1994 law was passed to protect access to houses of worship, religious institutions, abortion clinics, and pregnancy resource centers. But the Biden DOJ was found to have engaged in multiple times of biased enforcement of it while also collaborating and even seeking to fund pro-abortion groups. according to the DOJ Office of Legal Policy report. Conspiracy. There's no surprise. Just because you believe in something doesn't mean you could bend the rules to defend your belief. All right. Speaking of belief and defending illegality despite your beliefs, National Review, the New York Times can't take left-wing violence seriously. Rebutting such reporting in the detail it deserves would require a book-length argument, which I plan to provide, says this author at the National Review. The New York Times is ringing alarm bells in its sprawling feature with no fewer than 5 bylines. That's typical of the New York Times. They can't, reporters can't write stories themselves. The paper of record revealed that the Trump administration is leaning on its European allies to take a far left terrorism seriously. The New York Times fears that the initiative is a thinly veiled effort by the Trump administration to persecute its domestic political adversaries. But the Times and its sources' concerns are not entirely unfounded, but the outlet's larger political mission, questioning the scale, if not the very existence of the violent left, and it's not well disguised, and if it were to succeed in its propaganda. Well, let's let the headlines speak for themselves. Post-millennial Antifa-linked activist leads trans firearm training in Washington state. They say the goal is to help participants safely exercise a right that is effectively restricted from us by gatekeeping knowledge, whatever that means. Don't forget there were groups of transgender leftists attacked ICE facilities in acts of terrorism. So you're training terrorists. It's different than having firearm training, just like, hey, for your self-protection. But trans people are deluded in the fact that people are trying to get them. Nobody cares that you're trans. But if you're surprised that in a grocery store, people are looking at you funny or accidentally call you man or sir instead of ma'am, you know, if you appear to be a dude in a dress and someone calls you sir, you know, forgive them for living. And speaking of leftist attacks, and I'm going to not exactly put this in that bucket right now. Fox News Molotov cocktail attack on Sam Altman's home sparks fears of copycat strikes against tech executives. Daniel Marina Gama allegedly carried a manifesto listing other AI executives and their addresses. This isn't necessarily far left violence, although that exists. And if you don't think it does, you should just go out and read the headlines for an afternoon. Like yesterday, we were reporting on Savannah Hernandez's assault by people at the Whipple in Minneapolis. That had been an ongoing protest there for many, many, many months. Even though ICE is carrying out legitimate law enforcement operations, the ICE facility there is attacked on a daily basis. And Savannah Hernandez got attacked there for just trying to report on the leftists gathered there, and she got harassed, harangued, and assaulted. This is different. Now, I have called out to have antipathy towards technology, especially of the AI kind, but not to be an open-armed rebellion. This is a manufactured attack. Now, is this guy, Daniel Moreno Gama, is he a witting accomplice to the tech executives attacking themselves? Is basically what it is. I don't think he's witting. But as I said previously, it's good to have an antipathy towards and to be antagonistic towards AI and technology because it's going to be our downfall. However, that doesn't mean throwing Molotov cocktails. And just like the other attacks that have happened recently in terrorism, they didn't work. And throwing a Molotov cocktail at somebody's house and he's a rich dude that has surveillance, It just seemed staged. Washington Post, the CIA news outlet, fiery attack on OpenAI's Altman, a growing divide over AI. No one was hurt. The suspect was arrested, and much is still unknown about the incident, right? Because it was organized specifically to undermine anybody. Now, anybody who talks against AI is going to be a terrorist, and that's the purpose behind it. But the attack fueled concerns in Silicon Valley that violence inspired by fear or dislike of artificial intelligence may become more common. See what they said? Their fear or dislike. If you dislike artificial intelligence, or you're fearful that it might be a disruptive technology that's bad for humans, all of a sudden you're a terrorist. It will inspire your dislike or fear of artificial intelligence will inspire violence. That's what the Washington Post is saying right here. The attack also triggered a wider heated discussion over who is responsible for sometimes apocalyptic tons of debates over the future that AI development may bring. Of course. Silicon Valley figures, industry critics, and law enforcement are called for arguments over AI's impact to become less divisive and extreme. Arguments over AI's impact. It's not extreme. The impact is going to be extreme. The impact is, in fact, divisive. We don't need it. We have plenty of humans that need jobs and things like that. So why are you developing technology to take the place of humans? I don't suggest you go out and throw Molotov cocktails and what that's going to do. What I suggest you do is not be inspired by, but to read the manifesto of Ted Kaczynski, because it lays it out right there. But I don't believe in violence isn't the answer. Education is always the answer. And that's what they block most, is people being educated on what is happening on a daily basis. And the whole thing, intelligence, is not to convince you one way or another. The job of intelligence is to create ambiguity, which means that you don't know anything, either or, because if intelligence and propaganda came out on one side of an argument, you could just go, oh, that's propaganda, I'll believe the opposite. So they don't do that. They just make you confused. New York Times, story number 22. Man held an attack on OpenAI's chief's home, had a list of AI leaders. Officials say the authorities said the 21-year-old Texas man charged with throwing a homemade bomb at the gate of Sam Altman's home had written at length about the threat of AI. So he threw a largely symbolic Molotov cocktail at the guy's gate. What's that going to do? Right? And surprisingly, or not surprisingly, he happened to have a manifesto with him with a list of other targets. Who does that sound like? Sounds like another person who is led down the road of violence and terrorism by people he talks to online. And maybe this poor soul, maybe he had been taking antidepressants or other drugs that make you susceptible to violent influence online. What we've heard about school shooters and other terrorists that are inspired online, we always say, oh, they've been radicalized to this point or that point, right? But we never hear about the people they're talking to, right? Except in the Buffalo parking lot massacre, where it turned out that the guy was talking to an ex-FBI agent. The man, Daniel Marino Gama, also appeared to have written a document that identified views opposed to artificial intelligence. It identified views, oh no, and discussed the purported risks of AI poses to humanity. Are there any? The document included the names and addresses of other executives, investors, and board members of AI companies, but prosecutors did not name them. Oh, that's good. I am going to advocate for others to kill and commit crimes. Then I must lead by example and show that I'm fully sincere in my message. Oh, is that your thing, to throw a Molotov cocktail at somebody's gate? He didn't kill anybody. You see what this is? This is all to start the ball rolling, to get the investigative and intelligence services to focus on anybody online who talks about resisting or openly showing antipathy towards artificial intelligence. It's coming. It's coming. You don't think once the leftists get back in power, well, it's going to become so authoritarian that you're just like in the UK, you're going to have people showing up at your door. Police, we heard you were talking about this or that online. Come with us, please. And yesterday I was also talking about what's the name of the bill? It's another amnesty bill that some Republicans are supporting. And I said, I don't have a problem with amnesty, but you have to close the border. I would like to see an immigration moratorium, but close the border, and you have to deport all the criminal legal aliens. You can't start talking about amnesty because you might very well give amnesty to criminals. Why would you do that? You shouldn't. And of course, if I were to propose something, there would be all sorts of application processes that you would have to go through, obviously, and have to be vetted, whether you're going to stay. No blanket amnesty, nothing like that. Because Fox News reports, story number 23, illegal immigrant accused of Easter kidnapping, sex assault in college town. DHS rips second attack in weeks. The case comes weeks after a 15-year-old was allegedly lured into a deadly ambush by another illegal immigrant suspect in Missouri. Federal authorities are warning Missouri officials not to release an illegal immigrant accused of raping and kidnapping a woman in a quiet college town on Easter Sunday, the second violent crime in the state in just weeks involving a suspect in the country unlawfully. Department of Homeland Security announced Monday that Christian Lopez Gomez, a Honduran national who had entered the U.S. illegally in April 2024 and was released into the country under the Biden administration, is now charged in the attack in Kirksville, home to Truman State University. Authorities say Gomez raped the woman and held her against her will during the holiday weekend. He remains behind bars in Adair County Jail, where ICE has lodged a detainer to keep him from being released. Let's hope they honor that. More leftist news. I mean, this is all the left. It's giant friggin' conspiracy. And I should have included the article because I had another Zero Hedge article that said Germany rapes. They had more rapes. They had the highest amount of rapes in 2025 in Germany, most attributed to foreign nationals in their country illegally. I should have included that. You could find it on Zero Hedge. It was published today, so you could find it. I just didn't include it, but I should have because it would have paired nicely with that other Fox News article. But moving on to other leftist news, Los Angeles hotel industry struggling under wage mandate signed by Mayor Karen Bass. Phased in minimum wage hike in Los Angeles mandated up to $30 per hour for airport and hotel workers. $30 an hour. That's completely unreasonable. Completely unreasonable. Of course you can't, if you're a boutique hotel, not part of a major chain, how are you going to pay that? Hotels are struggling to keep up with the rising operating costs coupled with falling demand, said the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Phased in minimum wage in Los Angeles mandated up to $30 per hour for airport and hotel workers. The law was signed into law last year by Mayor Karen Bass, mandating that their hourly wage must be raised by $2.50 each year until it reached a maximum of $30 in 2028. So it's not there yet, but it could very well get up there. And the point is, minimum wage is minimum wage, right? Is that the reason they can charge that is because it's the lowest wage they can charge, usually for unskilled labor. You can't force businesses to pay people a significant amount. $30 an hour is a significant amount for unskilled labor. Why do they deserve that amount? They don't. get a skill and you can earn more money. And it's, that was $30 an hour was more than I was making as a journalist, to be honest with you. It was close. I think I was $27, $28. But it's anything that you'd want to do, they can charge you less for. And you could, I was part of a union, you could always bicker, you could always try to, get a higher wage. I mean, that's the point of the wage game. You really want to make money, open your own business. It's really the best way to make money. If you're working for somebody else, they decide how much you get paid. Fox News, inside teachers union May Day dress rehearsal, critics warn will groom students into Dem foot soldiers. Of course it will. North American Valley Institute says unions will view students as foot soldiers in political and ideological battles. First of all, teachers unions, it's okay what they do. But the problem is here is that you had a teacher telling his students, May Day is a dress rehearsal for maybe there's a random day, June, that we're all like, no work, no school, no shopping. So a general strike, which is what communists use, said a history teacher in Chicago public schools. You can't tell students to walk out of school. I mean, it's just ridiculous. There are truancy laws against that in most municipalities. And if you're a college student, you're paying, so you're undermining yourself. But general strikes, the government can't do anything for you. I'm telling you. All they could do is undermine what you're trying to do through regulation and law. They don't make things easier. I think one of the best things that government has done, particularly under Trump in his first term, was the tax-free, the incentive zones, that they would take underserved communities and they would remove a lot of the litigation, restriction, and taxes from investing capital into those areas. It worked very, very well. People got better jobs, better paid jobs. And in some instances, people within that depressed community, not always the Black community, but include them there, their restrictions and regulation was removed from opening your own businesses, reducing licensing fees and so forth and so on, that allowed people within the Black community to open their own businesses easier with less capital. Fox News again, article number 26, popular weight loss medications linked to hidden side effects, study shows. I've been reporting on this for some time. Half of the users reported more than one side effect. The most common were nausea, vomiting, and constipation. But also, 4% of users described side effects reported menstrual irregularities, like chills or hot flashes, temperature-related symptoms. That's not good. I mean, they're symptoms. Nearly 13% of all users experience psychiatric symptoms. Wow. Such as anxiety, depression, and insomnia. And then you can get on antidepressant medications, and those will give you suicidal ideation. But at least you won't be depressed and fat. 5% also complain of abdominal pain, acid reflux, and headaches and dizziness. If you have acid reflux, you can get on Pepsid AC or one of these other medications that could, only in 1% though, could give you IBS or colitis. If you know what that is, that's like bleeding out of your asshole. Also, fatigue was also the second most commonly reported symptom overall, but has met relatively few reporting thresholds in existing trials. The gap between what patients are self-reporting online and what gets captured in the trials is really what motivated this whole line of work, which he's reporting on. Additionally, body composition analysis can help identify issues such as muscle loss, excessive water loss, or insufficient fat loss. So, also, stomach paralysis, which causes muscle loss. So what this does is you're not absorbing the nutrition fat, protein from the food that you're supposed to be getting. So you're eating, but you're taking a drug that undermines the digestive process, the absorption process. And that's why you probably can feel all these different things, because it's not good for you. You're supposed to eat to get nutrition, and then that nutrition builds your body. If you eat and you're not getting nutrition, instead of you're just absorbing glyphosate or corn syrup or sugars or other non-nutritional fat, mostly from dairy, because dairy fat is a little different, and with the lactose, I don't want to get into it so much, but if you're eating like chicken fat or beef fat or other animal fat that isn't from dairy, it's better for you, better protein in any case. Not saying that dairy isn't bad. Not saying that dairy is bad. It's a source of protein, but it has other things associated with it. PJ Media, the Biden administration knew of COVID vaccine stroke risk and covered it up. New details emerging in the Senate investigation confirm that Biden administration officials at both the FDA and the CDC knew about a significant stroke risk tied to the Pfizer's bivalent COVID-19 booster in people over 65. They knew, they said nothing. That's why I don't like government. Government isn't the source of the American dream. You're the source of the American dream. Government gets in the way of your American dream. Taxes, regulation, fees, etc. They make the system complicated. You know, that's the thing with law. And they make it so complicated that you can't really even understand it. A layperson can't. More from Fox News. Phone-free restaurants are trending across the U.S. Why more Americans are locking away their phones to reconnect with real life, touch grass. You sit down for dinner, the menus arrive, and instead of everyone reaching for their phones, something different happens. People actually start talking. This is the whole point. Across the U.S., a growing number of bars and restaurants are asking customers to put away their phones. Some offer incentives, others go further and lock devices in pouches. The goals stay the same, create a space where people actually connect. I think it's great. I go to this yoga retreat every year, my wife and I, and it's supposed to be a phone-free zone, but they don't police it. And so you have constantly these people walking around with their phones, and it just proves how shallow you are, okay? So you ever get into an elevator, and instead of people looking at each other, everybody immediately grabs their phone because there's that social anxiety. You can just look at people and smile. But it's one of my pet peeves also that people take out their phones at a restaurant. Not if it bings, you know, it's like, boom, oh, I got a text, I'm working, you know, it's a working lunch, or I need to communicate with somebody or my babysitter or whatever. Yeah, I get it. But that's not what most people do. They go, I see this all the time. They go into the restaurant and then they start texting people. And then they start going on social media, and then they'll start taking pictures. And the same thing at a concert. People have they're looking at the concert through their phone. Why even go to the concert? The point is that your phone, it should be used as a device to do certain things and then be put away, right? It's not your buddy. And with AI coming into the fold, it's more and more going to become an assistant that you start to bond with socially. Very, very disturbing. International news here, just the news. Story number 29. North Korea tests new strategic missiles from destroyer as leader Kim Jong-un looks on. So this isn't any surprise. Yeah, we don't need to. What we know is North Korea is a client state of China. So North Korea is the most extreme form of Maoism that's being incorporated into a society in the world. So we had in Cambodia, we had the Khmer Rouge, which were the most extreme Maoist society before they were beaten by the Vietnamese, which are pretty much Marxists, they're not Maoists, and the Vietnamese hate the Chinese. So the Marxists took over Cambodia and kicked out the Maoists, Khmer Rouge, and the Maoist is the most reductionist part of, I guess you could say, communism. Is it supposedly goes to year one, just like they did in the Cultural Revolution in China. And what you have in North Korea is this reductionist kind of thing. This is your leader. Nothing else matters. There's no religion. There's no nothing except the leader and the state. That's it. So, but the point I'm trying to make here with this article is that North Korea is a client state of China, and what they're doing is flexing military might, saber rattling because of what's going on in Iran. So China, whatever North Korea does, the Chinese won't admit this, but they do that under the guise or under the wink and a nod from the Chinese. Whenever the Chinese are facing some sort of issue, particularly militarily, globally, all of a sudden North Korea starts shooting off missiles. It's to try to distract the U.S. from Iran to North Korea, but nobody cares now because we know exactly what happens. Now, the North Koreans have nuclear weapons, they have the missile technology, and the Chinese were trying to assist Iran and get it doing the same thing. And the lesson we learned with North Korea, we weren't going to repeat in Iran, especially because where Iran is as far as oil and the Persian Gulf and et cetera, we see the problem with them being a rogue regime, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. But this is China trying to flex some muscle with North Korea to get us a little distracted. Trump, stay the course. Do not allow Chinese advanced weapons to go to Iran during this conflict. You could let them take out oil, but you better be monitoring that shit with satellites or whatever, however you, with drones, however you can monitor, you better be monitoring because we can't have weapons, advanced missiles, anti-ship missiles going into Iran. That's what started this whole problem. We can't allow that to fester, that issue. All right, if you didn't hear yesterday, Viktor Orban of Hungary, the right-wing darling or the nationalist darling of Europe, has been ousted by a manufactured, slick politician, young, slick politician. Obviously, again, this guy came out of nowhere. Then he was around, then he disappeared for a year, and he came back with all this political swagger and knowledge, and he was supported by the younger class, but he wants to undo everything that Viktor Orban did was standing on their own, having some sovereignty within the European Union to make their own decisions and how his country would relate to the Ukrainian war and to immigration, all these other things. But now he's gone, and this young slick guy is going to kick open the door to immigrants and obviously side with the rest of the European on the war in Ukraine. But Real Clear Politics reports that Vance says we supported Orban because he was one of the very few who stood up to the bureaucracy in Brussels for the U.S. and just for international, for nation state sovereignty and the right for a nation state to decide how they want to conduct themselves. Well, preserve traditionalism over progressivism, and preserve the dilution of their population by not allowing immigration, unfettered immigration, to dilute their way of life. And obviously we saw, and I just mentioned what happened in Germany, so they were trying to prevent that. Some tech news, because we're at an hour right now. Financial Times, AI chatbot misdiagnosed in over 80% of early medical cases, study finds. Top models, including OpenAI and DeepSeek, which is the Chinese one, make judgments too quickly than when patients' data is incomplete. Well, they're trying to say that, oh, AI chatbots, they're great for diagnosis. But no, they act too quickly in 80% of the cases. That causes the misdiagnosis. No, it doesn't. They're just like regular doctors do. the interest is always in diagnosis. And so if the interest is in diagnosis, you're going to make it quickly, regardless of what facts you have, whether it's complete or incomplete. Nobody wants to hear that a doctor is unsure. And AI is never unsure. And so that's the issue. When I was growing up and went to doctors more when I was younger, the doctors always said, well, I don't know what that is. You know, you want to do further tests? Further tests. Well, I don't know what that is. I never had a malady that they were sure about what it was. Zero Hedge, first humanoid Story number 32. Is this the last one? I believe so. First humanoid robot with embodied intelligence for high-risk job enters service in the dizzying heights of a chemical storage facility. A new kind of worker is punching in. China has reportedly deployed its first embodied intelligent humanoid robot designed for high-risk industrial operations. It isn't just to fix machines. It's a 90-kilogram robot that can climb walls and work where humans can't, or where humans can. I mean, they'll be deposed. Interestingly, the multi-purpose system is intended to replace human workers in hazardous conditions, or any conditions, such as chemical storage tank construction. According to the reports, this machine uses magnetic chassis to stick to walls, allowing its humanoid upper body to operate on metal surfaces. The robot could be used to execute core industrial tasks, including precision welding, rust remediation, and routine inspections. If you don't know, these chemical storage tanks are very hazardous to work in. And if you remember the movie, what was the one with Julia Roberts? Aaron Brockovich, where that's where people were poisoned by the cancer-causing materials that would end up in the watershed, and it poisoned the people that were working cleaning these chemical storage tanks, and that would poison the people. Back to the robot article, Zero Hedge, it moves beyond basic cleaning or inspection by leveraging advanced AI to adapt to its environment and handle a wide range of complex industrial tasks with 15 degrees of freedom and dual arms. The robot mimics human flexibility to safely multitask on scaffolds, performing precision tasks such as simultaneously welding and grinding. This physical agility is driven by a mass AI brain trained on 100,000 hours of data, enabling it to navigate complex environments with ease. The embodied intelligence allows the robotic machine to perceive its surroundings, adapt to complex real-world scenarios, and improve its performance through ongoing experience, just like humans do. However, moreover, it uses tethered cable systems to eliminate the power limitations that usually hold mobile units back, because they operate with battery packs. So batteries are the key. The problem is batteries are heavy. So with robotics, you can't have something that's too heavy, because the majority of the robotics has to deal with the heaviness, the weight of the battery. And so if you take that away and then you tether the power supply, so I believe what this is saying is you're going to see robots, more likely in the beginning, humanoid robots be tethered to a power supply. But they're certainly moving towards freedom of movement with untethered battery-powered robots. Most of these are going to be the dog type, because the four-legged robot is able to safely and adequately carry the power supply more efficiently than upright humanoid robot. But those are the robots that are going to be replacing humanoid robots, because they have to walk around and have arms and stuff. So thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. Thanks for joining me today. We're about 10 minutes over. Typical, usually get through the most news covered in one day. Usually in about an hour. It's really an hour and 10 minutes most days. But thanks for joining me today. Appreciate you. Join me tonight for another episode of Tuesdays with Harry. Perhaps we go live about 9:15 or so. Or join me tomorrow and every day, Monday through Friday, live streaming at 10 a.m. for the most news and headlines to shape your worldview. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to the trick. See you later. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.
The New World Order.
Google me, bitch! Google me,